My name is Pat Gazemba. I'm a retired professor from Salem State University, and I'm at the Lynn Museum with Jim Moser, project director of Through a Rainbow Lens, and we're going to introduce you to Lynn's LGBTQ+ history. I started this research in the 1980s when I interviewed several patrons from the Lighthouse Cafe, the oldest known gay bar in Massachusetts. I heard remarkable stories of gay men and lesbians who were part of a proud working class bar culture.
I was fascinated by your research, and I knew it was only the tip of the iceberg. To dig deeper, we collaborated with Professor Andrew Darien at Salem State University and Christian Racinos of United Lynn Pride. We were astounded to find that Lynn's history included nearly 20 gay bars and a wealth of stories that had never been told. How did our community, which once had to hide, gain a measure of political power? How did the racially and ethnically inclusive city of Lynn foster an environment where a Lynn native could become the first non-binary actor to win a Tony Award?
Alex, I should not be up here as a queer, non-binary, fat, black little baby from Massachusetts. And to anyone that thinks that they can't do it, I'm going to look you dead in your face that you can do anything you put your mind to.
We've come a long way, and the gay bars played their part as safe places for organizing and building community. How did the gay bars come to be? Why so many? And why are they all closed now?
Yeah.
By the way, when the bars were around, they were generally called gay bars, and so we'll use that term even though the bar patrons were mixed. This film shows the joys, triumphs, setbacks, and struggles of Lynn's gay, lesbian, and trans community in their fight for equality through stories of Lynn's gay bars and through dozens of interviews recorded in 1983, 2023, and 2024. So Pat, when does our story begin?
LGBTQ+ people have always been in Lynn, but little was known of that history until we started researching a series of gay bars that go back to at least the 1930s. It was a time of secrecy, danger, and discrimination when gay and lesbian people had to be careful about where they went and how they expressed themselves.
Lynn has always been a gateway city for new people, ideas, and cultures, and so it's no surprise that the first gay bar opened on Lynn Harbor in the 1930s. Sailors could leave the lighthouse, cross Washington Street, and board their ships.
It started out as a seamen's bar. Actually, the lesbians started going there first for prostitution, getting the sailors' monies. It was the attraction of those people to the big money of the seamen that brought the gay and lesbian crew there.
The boats would actually pull up. That was another thing the lighthouse was noted for. We used to get a lot of Navy people, but then when it became gay, it was technically supposed to be off limits to the servicemen, but they still came.
The lighthouse was a sanctuary for lesbians, but it was also a dangerous place.
When you walked in there, it was total bravery, because you didn't know if you were going to make it home alive. Because you'd be sitting at the bar and you shotgun 22 bullets galore would come flying through that door.
Fights were common with the neighboring bars.
They would start a little on the fags, but not so much. It was the girls that would dress like guys. You want to be a guy? Okay, let's fight.
One time, a biker gang took the patrons hostage. They started drinking down the bar and smashing bottles in the corner. Kathy Clay spoke up.
The only thing we asked is, if you're going to kill us, can we get drunk too? So they let us drink too.
Kathy Clay, as a teenager, refused to wear dresses and was committed by her family to Danvers State Mental Institution. Close to Kathy's release, a nurse came up to her and gave her a note and said, "When you get out of here, I want you to go to this place." And she gave Kathy the address for the lighthouse. One of the first people Kathy saw when she walked into the lighthouse was that nurse. Kathy was relieved that she was not crazy.
I felt great. I goes, oh, God, that's not me. Thank God, I'm not crazy. Finally. Jeez, it's not me. Look at them all.
Pat, were there any LGBTQ+ people in Lynn before the 1930s?
Sure there were. In the 19th century, for example, a spinsters party was held on Western Ave in Lynn, and it was attended by 100 single women. We suspect that many of those single women were in couples in same-sex relationships called Boston marriages. Throughout the 19th century, Lynn women were involved in struggles for women's rights and suffrage, labor rights and abolition, and civil rights, all of which intersect with and are the foundation for LGBTQ+ rights.
Nathaniel Hawthorne visited Lynn, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote about Lynn, Ralph Waldo Emerson lectured in Lynn, and Oscar Wilde appeared at the Lynn Music Hall. There is speculation and some evidence that each of these men loved another man. Trans people have always been in Lynn. In 1677, an Essex County woman named Dorothy Hoyt was convicted by a Puritan court of wearing men's clothing. She was sentenced to be severely whipped. Trans people continue to be treated harshly today, 350 years later.
The 1970s would remain a time of continuing danger and secrecy, but some brave Lynn leaders fought back, resisted cultural norms, organized, and laid the groundwork for local liberation. Segments of Lynn's LGBTQ+ community connected with movements in Cambridge and Boston. Lynners helped create institutions like Gay Community News, Sojourner, and the Homophile Union in Boston. And the gay bars just kept coming.
Lynn's first new gay bar in 32 years, the Aquarius Lounge, opened on the Lynnway.
There used to be a beautiful gay bar in the Aquarius. When Fran's was in its best day, the Aquarius was just opening one. I mean, it was really beautiful. It was a palace. And they had gay and lesbians from all over. I mean, it was wild. It was a beautiful place. It only lasted about 2 years and it burnt down.
The loss of the Aquarius, although tragic and suspicious, did little to dampen the desire for gay spaces or political advocacy. Robert Dow from Lynn was elected president of the Homophile Union of Boston. He was a gay rights pioneer, and elected officials like Barney Frank and Elaine Noble would send people to him to learn about the fight for gay rights. He went on TV to advocate for gay rights, and as a result, he lost his job. When Mr. Dominic's opened on Central Ave, they boldly ran an ad on the front page of the Lynn Item, declaring themselves to be Lynn's newest gay spot. The bar was so popular that they had to open a second location. They also got a lot of complaints from their neighbors about noise and prostitution.
It had a home kind of feel. It was very small. It was a very small town. Everybody kind of knew each other after a while. It had a plain, black and white linoleum floor, some square tables with chairs, and people would be talking to each other and moving amongst the chairs. And there was a small dance floor and a jukebox that somebody would play the same song over and over and over again.
While the gay bar scene was thriving, a series of suspicious fires put the bars in jeopardy. There were 5 suspicious fires at the Lighthouse Cafe, and the last one closed the bar.
The Collins family, who owned the Lighthouse, bought the burned-out property and in 1976 opened Fran's Place.
So we purchased the building, we did all the renovations, and we were sort of stuck. And we're like, where everything's new, we need a new name. Like, why don't we call it Fran's Place? And that's how we got the new name. We opened up, and I have to tell you, it instantly was a hit.
When Fran's Place first opened, they had a button at the door where they would hit it, and the lights would flash. So you would have to, if you were a man, you'd have to grab a female. If you were, you had to mix it up, because if the cops came in, it wasn't legal to be dancing as a gay couple.
And Fran's Place became one of the best-loved bars ever in Lynn. Popular for drag shows, it also attracted huge crowds.
The first time I went to Fran's was with my best friend that gave me that kiss. That was our first time, and that was the first time I really was engaged in seeing like a real drag show. That was like really mind-blowing, because I was like, wow, this stuff really exists.
Doing shows and everything, I was used to doing it. But I didn't think they would accept me the first time I hit the stage. I thought it was going to be a letdown again, but they fell in love with me.
Every year, Fran's put on a charity drag review called Night of 100 Stars. Here is part of the only remaining video of a drag show at Fran's. Fran's Place constructed an elaborate float each year for the Boston Pride Parade. When the women's movement push for job equality hit the GE in Lynn, it started hiring women into the skilled trades. For example, Susan Shepard was hired on the shop floor, and there she would later meet the woman who would become her wife, Marcia Hams, and the two of them together began working for women's rights in the union in Lynn, and they won those rights in court.
In fact, one of the things that we ended up working on, I in particular, was on a big comparable worth case because of the disparity between the pay for men in the whole GE complex and the women's jobs. So it ended up being quite successful.
The first LGBTQ plus political group on the North Shore that I'm aware of was the North Shore Gay Alliance, later renamed the North Shore Gay and Lesbian Alliance. I was a proud member. A number of us in the late 1980s built a Boston Pride float at a member's home on Walcott Street in Lynn. And that float featured our mascot, a lavender lobster. Our group grew to over 500 members, published a newsletter, and even issued membership cards.
500 people from the North Shore attended the first march in Washington for lesbian and gay rights.
Safety was always a concern for LGBTQ plus Lynners. For example, there were gay bashings on Washington Street in downtown Lynn and on Lynn Beach. On one occasion, a woman was assaulted and beaten unconscious. A group of other lesbians rallied together and protested outside the courthouse in support of that woman.
Oh God, I got beat up. I got into a coma. I was in a coma for a month, a year, honey. And after I woke up, I just kept going.
Trans women are being, murdered all the time.
Yeah, there used to be people that would come in and just start yelling queer and faggot and just slamming things and leave. You'd have to watch leaving the door. They tell you leave with someone and be careful leaving. Make sure there's nobody around, that you don't get jumped and everything. And I always said to him, make sure you sit against the wall facing the door so you see what's coming in. There was a lot of trouble at Fran's Place, like with Blue Note. Big brawls all the time.
There was a big thing going around Boston. Gay men were getting hit over the head with hammers and bricks, going into bars. There was a lot of gay bashing.
You could literally be beaten or shot at just from walking down the street.
The police could be our protectors or the perpetrators of violence. It was a mixed bag.
The cops come by, and at one point, one of them yells out the window, calls us, dykes, says, fucking dykes. And my friend said something to them, and that was all it took. They backed up really quickly, got out of the car, grabbed her, and slammed her violently on the hood of the car, and was going to proceed to cuff her. So I go over to the police officer, and I'm like, hey, you can't do that. You can't just do that. And he hauls off and hits me. And so I hit him back. It was me and probably 6 police officers, I would guess. And I got my ass kicked. But I end up going to court. And my friends come with me, and there were witnesses to it as well. Yeah, we got harassed by the cops a lot. I don't think we got harassed after that so much, though, because they got into a lot of hot water.
The Lynn police have never harassed me in all the years they've known me as a gay man. And I was drunk and falling around enough that I ended up in jail many, many, many nights under drunkenness back in those days. And they never bothered me.
Over time, police relations with Lynn's LGBTQ plus community would improve.
When the incident at Pulse happened, the police chief assigned 2 cruises to sit outside of Fran's. That, to me, was above and beyond the call of duty. And I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
The 1980s brought new dangers for the LGBTQ plus community in Lynn, particularly in the form of HIV and AIDS. The Lynn community responded with care, compassion, education, and strategies for prevention.
The loss of life due to AIDS was felt acutely by Lynn's gay bar patrons because the bars drew people from all the surrounding communities.
Because we were going to Fran's place in like early 80s, and it was like, there was people dying, people we knew were dying every day.
If I had friends that passed away with AIDS complications, some very good friends. I've saw friends who were disowned by their families because of it. And it was very scary because you never knew, whether it was going to be you next.
One person who really touched my heart was John. And he was a very flamboyant, gay man. He'd been beaten so many times, and this time he was HIV infected, and he actually had medications, and he had his needles that, had his medications in them. And one of the times that he actually survived one of his attacks was he pulled out his needles and told his attackers that he had HIV, and if they came near him, that he would, stab them with his needle, and he got away.
People that I was working with in the shows that I was on died of AIDS, and these men were all under 35 years old. And so that really put a footprint on me in terms of understanding my own, what my journey was, like coming of age, being gay, what that meant, the fear of being gay, because being gay meant you were going to die of AIDS, which of course that's not the case, but it was so much unknown. And so as I began to educate myself, I did realize that there was an opportunity to make a difference and be an advocate for my own community.
Many churches refused to perform services for AIDS victims. The St. Pius V Catholic community submitted a panel to the National AIDS Memorial Quilt with a letter saying, quote, "Our local funeral director and our parish community are welcoming to all people. And as a result, the AIDS Action Committee often referred people to us. We displayed their panel this year as part of our exhibit at the Lynn Museum. A portion of the AIDS quilt came to Lynn a dozen times and was viewed by thousands of Lynners. Wanting to make a strong impression, an HIV outreach worker worked in the bars and other gathering places dressed in drag. She was known first as Miss Syphilis and later as Blanche Debris.
Discrimination at work was also common.
I had some friends at work that wouldn't talk to me, and and they would say, hey, we don't, something would happen, and they'd be like, yeah, we don't want Dave coming in here because he's gay. Even someone who would talk about me and write about me and on notes and on my locker, and someone keyed my car, and I still back that person up because that wasn't me. I couldn't do that because they hated me. That means I didn't hate them. Because they just didn't know. They didn't understand.
I was often in situations where people of power were assuming that I was a straight man and openly being negative towards disenfranchised communities.
And there was a vice president of the university at that time who was particularly vexed by my moves around salary equity. Man-hating dykes was what he called us.
Lynn had 10 gay bars at 5 locations at various times during the 1980s. The gay bar on Broad Street changed its name a lot. It was Dom's Lounge and Barbecue, then Billy G's, then JR's Ranch, the Gay Blade, Marco, and finally a third Mr. Dominic's.
I think it was more a cover for something than anything else. So it wasn't really like they were trying to do a business. It was like just a business. It's like they needed a front for something.
It was a guy's bar. It was very seedy. Come to find out, it was known for, I guess, all the hustlers in the area used to hang out there.
Trans people were welcome at Mr. Dominic's and most other bars.
At Dominic's in 1977, I met my first transgender person who was transitioning. I thought absolutely nothing of it. You're Renee, hi, want to dance?
Joseph's restaurant was opened by Carl Norgall and his partner, Joseph Grover. They wanted to create a piano bar atmosphere, but it later evolved into a video bar with a small dance floor and Carl as the VJ playing music videos.
Joseph was strictly a men's bar. I mean, some lesbians went, but he wasn't too keen on the lesbian.
A fire that started at the gay bar Tammany Hall destroyed a dozen businesses in Central Square. The owner, Dominic Serino, was convicted of insurance fraud. He had contractors submit inflated invoices before the fire. Fran's place was plagued by fires for years, but that problem stopped when Mr. Serino went to prison.
Through that time, it was extremely tough because we had all these fires we had to deal with. And I was getting the word from other people who was doing it. And it was the guy up the street. So he gets caught burning his own place, goes to jail. I mean, I was being interrogated by the fire department, and I actually made an appointment after this with him and said, I can guarantee you, you will never see another fire in France. And we never did have one.
2 gay bars survived the second Great Fire of Lynn.
The next 12 hours would be a nightmare, literally, for the more than 500 firefighters who would be called to battle a 10-alarm blaze that will go down as one of the worst in New England history.
JR's ranch survived because it was a concrete bunker. Fran's place survived because the manager, Tony the Tiger, refused to leave the building, forcing the firemen to keep pouring water onto the roof.
I was on the phone with the fire department, and I told them I'm not going to leave the building. And so they put a hose truck on both sides, pouring water on the roof, saved the building from being burned to the ground. If it wasn't for that night, if it wasn't for me refusing to leave the building would be gone.
A widely read gay newspaper, The Guide to Gay New England, was produced in Lynn by Gary Dodderman, and it was printed at locations all around New England.
It became very popular, it became national. It was gay-orientated and told you where you could go, gay bars in different countries even, and different states. It was very informative.
The 1990s were a time of increased activity as more folks came out in the media-friendly atmosphere of the Ellen DeGeneres show and the sitcom Will and Grace. With those shows in the background, our movement gained strength. Jack Noseworthy, a Lynner, landed a TV role on Teach. One of Lynn's famous LGBTQ+ people in the arts, Jack is known for the roles he played in Event Horizon, Barbed Wire, and Killing Kennedy.
Edgar tells me, in my capacity as Attorney General, in as much as my capacity as your brother, I imagine that you're having an affair with Judas Campbell, who is also having an affair with Sam Giancana. Sam Giancana is a mobster.
I always knew that I wanted to be an actor. It was something I said from my earliest days and my earliest memories. I always knew that that was my path. And that experience that happens between the actors on stage and the audience, and something that can only happen once with that group of people, was like a drug. It was something, oh God, I just want to feel that again.
The North Shore Alliance of Gay and Lesbian Youth, also known as NAGLY, formed in Salem with members from Lynn.
There was a group of incredible, magical, amazing young adults at that point that were so fired up and so passionate about wanting to storm the halls, right, at the State House for change, for acceptance.
These kids are being who they are and who they know themselves to be at an age I could never have imagined possible when I was growing up.
A gay men's social group called Lynn Side Out formed in the Diamond District. At one point, they grew to over 120 members, held 24 functions, and published 17 newsletters.
So we started this social group It was really related to mostly house parties. We did progressive dinner parties, which were a lot of fun. You'd start at one house and have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, and you go to the next house for like main course and more cocktails. It was a lot of fun. We did a few of those. We did hikes in Lynn Woods. We had a couple of trips to Maine. We used to have dinner a lot ago. We did a couple of events at the Historical Society. We did a lot of the tea dances, like at 47 Central and at Fran's. We had a big, a beautiful garden party, which was at one of the nice houses in the Diamond District that had a really beautiful yard and garden. It was a very dressed up affair.
47 Central opened, and it would be named the #1 gay bar on the North Shore. It was a welcoming and supportive place. It was a sanctuary.
You become part of a community that you think you were told, were the scum of the earth. You come to find out there's more love and compassion and empathy and caring there. It was the best church I'd ever been to be honest.
Having this sanctuary where you let your hair down, you don't have to act a certain way, you wear what you want, you're not going to be judged, except by gay men who are very judgmental for doing that. What 47 Central means to me is totally different to what it means to a young gay man who's, let's say, 25, because they have their group of friends like I do, or like I did when I was 25, and they'll all go out somewhere, but that somewhere could be anywhere, and that's great. For us, it was very limited in choice, and that made 47 Central that much more special.
It was fun, it was exciting. You got to see people that couldn't be themselves in public come in and literally, they would strip that off and really show themselves inside the bar who they were. And that was somebody that just wanted to live, love, laugh, drink, dance, and be happy with the people surrounding them. Because the outside world, they wanted nothing to do with them. So they knew when they came into one of those bars, they were home.
47 Central entered lavish floats in the Boston Pride Parade. They also did a lot of fundraising for the community. The Lynn item called George Turkudis, owner of 47 Central, a phenomenon of fundraising.
When I bought 47 Central, we became active in Strongest Link. So my friend that had passed away from HIV, he was part of that group. So we would do fundraisers for them all the time and events for them all the time.
In the 2000s, we saw a profound shift in our movement. We focused more on broader civil rights, such as assuring that our families were protected, our chosen families had the rights and protections that all other families had, that we could have children ourselves, and that we could adopt children. We also wanted to assure that young LGBTQ+ students in our schools should be educated to be able to protect themselves, and that they should be inspired to believe that they had a bright future. And we wanted them to have positive same-sex health education.
The first gay-straight alliance at any Lynn school was formed at Lynn English High School.
If you support the club, I want you to get in the picture. So if you look back at that yearbook photo, the group is huge. And when really, there were probably only 3 of us.
Margot Abels of Lynn was fired from her position in the state's HIV AIDS education program for giving explicit sex information on how to protect themselves to young people at the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Conference. The right wing illegally recorded the workshop at that GLSEN conference, and a media frenzy ensued.
It was a crazy scandal. It was all over the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald. And, I had just moved to Lynn, and I had news vans parked down my street.
Fortunately, as a unionized worker, Abels was able to fight back in court, and eventually she won the suit. The marriage equality struggle culminated with a 2003 Massachusetts court decision legalizing same-sex marriage in Massachusetts. Lynn union activist Susan Shepard and Marcia Hams were the first same-sex couple in the United States to get a marriage license.
It was just a wonderful thing to happen. And there were 200 other couples there, you know, we're all lined up, you know, that it was a party. People were in tuxes.
The application has been completed.
One of the things that was wonderful was there was a woman there in the office with, there was like 3 of us couples getting our licenses. And there was a woman there with her like 5-year-old son. And I thought, oh, she probably was with one of the couples. No, she just came down. She wanted to show her kid history happening. That was beautiful.
I was one of those that hopped on the bandwagon and was like, I can get married now.
The city rolled back bar closing time from 2 a.m. to 1 a.m. The bars lost a lot of business. Judy Kennedy, who opposed the bar rollback, was elected mayor of Lynn by just 27 votes, and her name wasn't even on the ballot. All of the gay bars made sure that everyone at the bar went to vote that day. Certainly more than 27 people. You might argue that the gay community got Judy elected.
The 2010s were a time of renewed pride and acceptance as marriage equality swept the country. With the defeat of Hillary Clinton and the emergence of a MAGA mentality, our community remains laser-focused on preserving and institutionalizing our rights and protections, and expanding them, as well as documenting, preserving, and sharing our history. Lynn saw the first raising of the pride flag at City Hall. It was not on the official flagpole next to City Hall, but on the island across the street. More than 100 people attended Lynn's first gay pride event in the courtyard of the Lynn Museum.
A youth group called BU formed at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. They hosted the city's first youth pride event.
I was proud when the Lynn School Committee cut ties with Gordon College's student teaching program based on the college's discriminatory policies against LGBTQ plus people.
The Gordon College president had requested an exemption so that they could discriminate against LGBT people and not hire LGBT people.
A dress code debate ensued at the school committee over a student at Lynn English High School wearing a t-shirt that said, quote, "All the cool girls are lesbian." Lynn English High School students are to be commended for their bravery in standing up to support this student. Alex Newell won a spot on the TV show Glee and would go on to win a Tony Award for their role in the play Shocked. Glee softened the hearts and minds of millions of viewers to the challenges of our community, just as it consoled many viewers of all ages. Christy Cahill and Amanda Stevens opened Northern Nights, a gay bar on the Linway. Flamboyant yet homey, this was a promising new venture in an era when gay bars in Lynn were closing.
Fran's closed with an emotional farewell party. That location had hosted the Lighthouse and Fran's Place for 79 years.
Saturday was very, very emotional. It was one and end of an era. Fran's was the oldest gay bar in Massachusetts. I had that job since 1986.
That was an extreme emotional night for everyone, including me. I mean, people coming up to you, these are adults my age, maybe even younger, hugging you. I would have killed myself if it wasn't for this place. I mean, it's like, it was just shocking. And it's like, to know, I guess not to know what they really went through because when I saw them, they were extremely happy because they were in their home. And they used to call it, "This is our house."
So, Jim, what killed the bars?
Well, the rollback of bar closing time from 2 a.m. to 1 a.m. made the bars much less profitable. The ability to meet people online reduced the need for bars as a meeting place. And greater acceptance of gay people, such as through marriage equality, made it safer to be out and proud in public.
Well, I remember when AOL started and social media started, that was the downfall of the bars. And then I think equality was the other downfall of the bar, in the nightclubs. Because we always, before that, we had to go to a gay nightclub or a gay establishment to not be afraid of being harassed or being beat up or anything. And I think with the equality that we fought for, which I'm totally for, everything's more open and we can go anybody can go anywhere they want now.
It's sad because this generation of kids that are coming up now, that are walking in my footsteps, they're not going to know the fun that we had in these places. You know, they're not going to, and I'm not talking about, you know, drugs and whatnot. I'm talking about the community that you create. You know, you become a family in these places.
The 2020s have seen a time of rising community activity and increasing political power. With the gay bars closed in Lynn, community spaces for organizing are in our schools, houses of worship, and community organizations that we created, but also in mainstream organizations. Remaining separate or desiring inclusion is a tension and issue that will long be debated. Our community remains focused on institutionalizing our rights in this era in which democracy is challenged.
In the 2020s, we saw progress in sports, pop queer culture, labor support, publishing, language, pride celebrations, and in recording our history. Lynn elected its first out officials to the City Council and the School Committee, Coco Allensug and Tiffany Magnolia.
For Ward 3, you will have 2 city councilors moving forward because you can see my husband working very hard for our ward. Well, I'm the first LGBT city councilor in Lynn. There are LGBT councilors before me, but they're not out. So for me to be out, it inspires a lot of people in Lynn, not only the LGBT community, but the immigrants in general.
It takes people like me and Coco who are elected officials who stand up for LGBT rights, but it also takes every ally possible.
Lightweight boxer Rashida Ellis, a Lynn native, powered her way to compete in the Tokyo Olympic Games at age 26. She would go on to win the Elite Women's Championship gold, becoming the first American woman to win the lightweight division at the International Boxing Association World Championships.
Rashida Ellis gets it.
Well, first and foremost, it feels so good to be home.
Lynn native Jazola Escada was featured on the HBO Max voguing competition series Legendary, which explored ball culture.
He's the type of body you fall asleep on.
A dozen North Shore Labor Council members from Lynn joined 350 demonstrators in Danvers in support of a free face painting class conducted by a drag queen. Trans activist Olivia Worth launched a zine called Prismatic, designed to capture the queer voices of Lynn.
Anyone in the queer community in Lynn can contribute artwork, stories, poetry, essays, anything they'd want to contribute.
The language we use to describe our community has expanded.
Go ahead. Add more letters there. that really is the encompass the whole of the community.
Now they use the term mask, but I'm always going to use the term butch. I think it's important. Because butch was a dirty word, just like dyke was a dirty word, just like fag was a dirty word, just like queer was a dirty word.
I will be excited to have less labels, but more language, if that makes sense. Like, I love to be able to have the language to explain things, but I don't like having to fit myself into a box.
United Lynn Pride was formed to unite, engage, and empower the LGBTQ plus community in Lynn. We coordinate a dozen Pride Week activities each year: flag raising, rainbow bridge lighting, tower lighting, paint night, youth pride, rainbows on the river, a walking tour, a community meal, Zumba, art shows, and more.
I know that when we ended that year, organizations that normally wouldn't come to the table really did come to the table and worked out together and supported one another. And it was a beautiful week of shared energy all around.
And I wanted to be part of it, you know. It aligned with my interests and things I'd done in the past, and it was in my own community, so it all just sort of lined up.
Coco Allensug and Kirsten Frenny suggested that Lynn's LGBTQ plus history be documented. United Lynn Pride applied for and was awarded a grant from Mass Humanities. After a year of research, we opened an exhibit at the Lynn Museum entitled Through a Rainbow Lens, a reflection on Lynn's LGBTQ plus history. We were surprised to discover that Lynn had gay bars under 19 different names at 9 different locations. At the exhibit, Lynn's LGBTQ plus community and allies came together again, as they had not done since the last bar closed 8 years earlier.
And so, the torch has been passed to a new generation.
Our Lynn ancestors fought for abolition, fair wages and working conditions, suffrage, women's equality, and LGBTQ rights. The forces arrayed against them have been daunting, yet the struggle continues.
We organized, we partied. We protested, we celebrated.
We marched, we shared our stories, and we will continue to do all of that until we reach equality and justice for all people. These times call for our bravery, openness, and commitment. Courage is always in fashion, and it is called for now.
We asked our storytellers to look to the future. Their reflections touch my heart.
We can't relax. We can't take for granted the progress that is done because it can be taken away.
I see hope. I see hope everywhere. But I also see so much work needs to be done, and it can't be done by any one person. It needs to be done as a collective. And it needs to be done not just a collective, it needs to be done as a collective, as a diverse group of people, as people who have come from different backgrounds and come from different faith communities and come from different perspectives.
For me, it's creating that connection in the community again. People really have to find, like, we were all really close at one point, and then as we got accepted, or as technology took over and the bars started closing down, everybody kind of like went into their own ways and their little pods and doing whatever. Right now, I just feel like it's so incredibly important that everybody starts banding together again. It's like, you know, everybody holding their arms together, walking the bridge. It's like what we have to go back to do.
You can't undo this. I think we're in for a rough time.
One, that we're here.
2, we're not going anywhere. And 3, if people think that they're just going to steamroll us into losing our rights, it's not going to happen.
I am constantly inspired by how many people are fighting. I honestly and truly believe the people who want the world to be more accepting and loving and who want everyone to help each other outnumber the people who are spouting hate.
So I just want to highlight that just the stories that you see online are not the only ones that you should be listening to. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your people, know how you can support one another, and know that it can't always be done so openly and virtually, and that coming out is just as important. And if we can lay a safe space for that in our communities, that's so necessary. So thank you to all who support that work and make that happen.
You've heard stories of identity, self-discovery, trauma, community, liberation that make up Lynn's LGBTQ plus history. But remember, many stories are left untold because for some people, it's not safe to be out in public. Please consider how you might create more safety and belonging for everyone in Lynn.
Anyone that thinks that they can't do it, I'm going to look you dead in your face that you can do anything you put your mind to.